Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Men on the Rocks. It is I, Joe. Joining me this week, you know him, you'll love him, doesn't cheat ever, Atlas.
Hello, everybody.
That's right, we're joining in on the bandwagon. We're joining in on the band. We're talking about the guy that cheated in the online tournament. If only because we think it's a good talking point that we feel like we should discuss and address. If only just for those who aren't in the know to educate. But also this is someone that we've ran into before in the past and we have history for. So, there's that. But right next to that, actually, I think is the announcements. Atlas, what announcements do we have this week?
All right, let's get started with the new year, everyone. So we're looking forward to a couple of things in the coming weeks. First off, just want to give a shout out to some of the folks from the Bellingham area. Some great people up there. We have a really good relationship with them. Gonna come down and play in our weekly tournament this week. So as of this air date, looking forward to playing with you all. And then the actual things to look forward to, the year is starting off strong with 2 tournaments in February. There's one on February 10th, is the CEDH 4 tournament. This will be held in Issaquah, Washington at Laughing Dragon. Events hosted by the CEDH group. Some fantastic admins. Thank you guys for organizing these awesome events every time. They're a blast to go to. Thrilled to be a part of your team, your group. And we're really looking forward to playing that. I know that a bunch, if not all of our people from down south here are going to be showing up. So we'd love to see some of you folks, you listeners out there as well, showing up to the Laughing Dragon tournament, CDH 4. It's going to be a blast. And then the next week on February 17th, so you get 1 week to reset, and then our LGS, Gabby's Olympic Cards and Comics, is going to be hosting their first major tournament of the year, the Olympic Commander Challenger Series. This is their 3rd year doing it, so Season 3, Chapter 1, I think is what they're calling it.
Oh god, is that the way we're doing it?
I think that's how they're doing it, or maybe volumes or something like that.
Oh, joy.
Anyways, they host 4 tournaments a year. They're quarterly. They're really, really great. Highly competitive. We've moved from the realm of no proxies into now they're allowing 10 proxies at this event. So while it's not super accessible yet, we're working on changing that. And if you show up and play and tell the TOs and the judges how what a great time you had and how much better it would be if you could proxy everything, that makes it even better because that increases the odds that the next one we can do 100% proxy.
This is how the change happens, people.
We gotta cause it ourselves, right? And so really looking forward to playing that. There are a ton of talented players who show up from all the way from up north down to the Portland area. We got all sorts of people who can come to these different tournaments. We would love to. I think every single time we've beat our entrant number. So it would be really cool if we could hit a record high again at this event. Mm-hmm. So that'll be super awesome. They have some cool pricing.
We got some
custom playmats and stuff. Yeah, custom playmats on top of like store credit and things like that. So
yep,
really looking forward to playing with you all at that event as well. Mm-hmm. And then of course the Eminence Circuit. Everyone's
always ongoing
to that. Grinding those online tournaments for points. Hopefully not getting stuffed by cheaters. We'll talk about it later. And then there are some in-person events that are coming up too, but I'm not exactly sure when those are. There are none in the area, so that we probably won't be going to any soon. But hopefully, we'll see you guys at some of these local tournaments in February.
We absolutely will. It's going to be great. Tournament season's back, baby. It's grinding time. Rise and grind gamers. I specifically want to shout out one gamer this week. Chase, want to shout you out for being the lucky patron of the week. You should come on down. Get a drink with us.
So Atlas.
Yes, Joe.
I understand why cheating is bad in the game. But what if I really want to cheat?
Then you probably still shouldn't.
Yeah, but what if I really want to?
Then go for it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Is you get banned for tournaments from life?
I mean, like, I don't know. That seems pretty reasonable. You know, I win a tournament and then I can never play the game in a tournament setting again. I'll just find
Yeah.
something else to do.
Yeah, just pick up a new hobby and go cheat in that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a weird one to talk about. I feel like this is like one of those like obvious like don't do's, but I feel like you brought up some points that I think we can like expand a little bit further beyond like the cheating's bad. Okay, don't do a cheat.
Yeah, don't do a cheaty pants, that cheaty face. Yeah, so for context, that this episode ages at least kind of well. There's it's very topical, but it brought up something that we didn't think we had to, but I guess we do need to talk about. And that is cheating in CDH in a competitive tournament environment. You can kind of apply it to really any game, anywhere.
Pretty much, yeah.
Don't. You're a scumbag if you
Yeah, just don't.
Just don't. But basically what happened is there was a tournament grinder from our area, actually, who got caught up in a scandal wherein they were playing a couple of online tournaments and some people recorded the games. They won one of those tournaments, top 16 another or something like that. Anyways, long story short, a couple weeks later, some video comes out, says, hey, this person's cheating. Here's the video to prove it. And even people who are not super well versed in card cheating, they call it mechanicking in the US or sharping in the UK.
Ooh,
but those mechanics or those sharps are they're able to like manipulate cards, like playing cards for poker or something typically, but like also you can do it with magic cards, to get cards to the top of the deck that they're not supposed to have, and blah 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 blah, right? And so like you watch this video and you can just see him blatantly like sticking. So the guy plays Corvold, so Dockside's like the most broken card in the deck. So you just see him like putting Dockside on top of his library, like twice.
Functionally, he tries to like hide it a little bit, but he's like really widely shuffling the deck, like basically seeing nearly every single card in order.
Yeah, and then there's another video where he like pulls another card that
or like behind his leg or something.
Yeah,
like
it's like comes from off camera, and it's like you wouldn't catch it if you were like playing the game, because you'd be looking at other cams and like it'd be like one of those like, oh, he just had the nuts again, guy's so lucky type things. This is frustrating.
Yeah, damn, he actually just had everything. That's crazy.
Yeah, but then like you review the footage and you're like, oh no, he didn't have the nuts. He pulled another card in the same sleeve from off camera to put in his hand. So anyways, that's the background as to why we decided to do this episode, so that all y'all out there can hear our thoughts and opinions on why cheating is bad.
Yeah.
Not that this should be something we have to talk about, but
we shouldn't have to talk about this. We really shouldn't. But like you said, like this is the local grinder that we've actually run into. We've had issues with him in the past, and it's just really funny that this all came to a head in such a manner. I'm not really gonna badmouth the guy beyond like I just don't like him. I don't think he's very pleasant to be around and play the game with. This kind of just seals the nail in the coffin. But yeah, like just don't cheat. Like. It plain and simple. Like for as much as we will gripe about lying and all that stuff, cheating is just like dog. Like you really can't.
It's like against the rules of the game.
It's literally against every single rule and every single moral. Like I'm sorry, you're so down bad for a dub.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that. It's like there's lying, which obviously you know that we here at Man on the Rocks we do not like. We do not think it is a good way to play the game, and there are lots of repercussions to people who lie outside of like that one particular round or whatever. We've talked about it before. I'm sure we'll mention it again. But cheating is like the next level, where it's like you're just not playing the game. You're not engaging in the contest, in the pastime, the hobby, the skill check, whatever you want to call it. You're not engaging with other players at the same level.
No.
You're playing a different game that other players are not aware that they are playing. That's kind of the best way that I can describe it.
Probably the most diplomatic way to put it.
I guess, yeah. So in this episode, we're gonna cover a couple of things. Just a couple of different bullet points about like online cheating versus like in person. We're gonna like talk a little bit about like sort of like the mentality behind why someone might cheat. Not that it makes it okay, but like just thinking about the mentality there. Some brainstorming. We're gonna talk about some things that you can do to like prevent cheating, some basic cheating techniques that like are pretty simple to pick up, just so that players can be aware of them and stop. Like if they think there's an issue, they can like call a judge and have somebody watch. And then just like kind of the overall impact on the community.
Yeah. All right. So kind of the first thing, online versus in person. I feel like this is going to be kind of like similar-ish. The mechanism and like sort of game mechanic, or like I guess agreed upon thing that a lot of people do to try and prevent cheating is just like simply cutting the deck, and that's really hard to do when you don't have physical access to the cards.
Yes.
It's very, very difficult to do. Not much more you can do beyond just like it's just something that you have to be observant on. I think if you're playing a lot of cam games, if you're going to like online tournaments and whatnot, someone ask, hey, can you cut your deck in half and give it a shuffle? Stuff like that. You're just gonna need to be just more like observant for, or I guess watch people's hands. I guess also.
Yeah. So one of the things that they actually like is like the best practice for online play right now is when you're in a tournament, you're supposed to do this thing called the Brazilian cut, is what people are calling it, right? And it's where you split your deck into 3 approximately equal piles. You're supposed to go 1, 2, 3, and you're supposed to assign a number to each pile, and then somebody in your pod says an order, like 2, 3, 1 on top or something like that. So you put like 2 on the bottom, 3 in the middle, and 1 on top. Which like it's a good like step to like try and it's a very passive step to try and prevent cheating. It's like simple enough. It's basically the same as cutting someone's deck in person, right? In theory, it's randomized. It just you run into some like weird issues, which is just in general with cams, you run into weird stuff where the field of view is restricted, or like there's like a miscommunication, or like, oh, my camera's flipped, and so like somebody might like put the opposite pile of the one you wanted on top just because they didn't realize that you had assigned the numbers 1, 2, 3, and they were looking at them as 3, 2, 1. So it's like just weird things like that are just tactical glitches, right? But it's that sort of ambiguity that leads to players being able to cheat and get away with it more effectively. It really is like it really is things just getting lost in communication, or air quotes lost, or like getting mixed up, things sort of like being hard to follow, and you can't see everything all the time, like people's hands aren't always in view. So like we mentioned earlier with that scandal that just happened, is the guy literally pulled a card off of a table to his left or out from under his leg or something. Like that's a lot harder to do when you're sitting right next to somebody and you go and reach into your bag and you pull out a card and they're like, what? Where'd that come from? Or you see
someone like duck down and grab something, like, what's going on?
Yeah, there's a reason why when you're playing in-person tournaments, like in order to avoid cheating, like you're supposed to leave your phone at the table, and like when you call a judge, like I have to take a bathroom break, you're supposed to leave your phone at the table, technically speaking. Like judges can make different exceptions and whatnot, but I've played in modern events and stuff before where like someone's like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom mid-match, and they like get up, don't leave their phone, come back, and just like ace a matchup that they're not supposed to, or that they like lost really hard in the first game or something, and you just like it's really obvious that they went to the bathroom and like looked up what the like sideboard tech is, or like what cards am I supposed to side in for this, that, or the other thing, things like that. So it's like that exists in Commander too, to some extent, but it's just that difference is like it is just harder to get away. It's possible for sure. People do it. People have been caught doing it for years in person, but it's just a lot easier to get away with online, and there's a lot less
stakes, I feel.
Yeah, I think like it's a lot easier to sort of distance yourself.
Yeah.
If you're doing it over online, it's like that whole anonymity thing, where if you're not involved with the humans at the table, like it's a lot easier to sort of distance yourself from it and be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna do it like this one time, or like just like rationalize it or dissociate or whatever, right?
Oh, I don't like this person. This person said something weird.
Yeah,
I really
this
want to
person
win this
deserves to
matchup.
lose, so it's fine that I'm cheating here.
Or like, man, I really hate that they're playing, Blue Farm. I really hate Blue Farm. I never win against Blue Farm.
That deck's so unfair, so I need to like even the odds by doing things like that.
Yeah, I think you covered all the basic things. The distance online I think is the easiest thing to like take advantage of, unfortunately. Like as great as it is that we have this like level of infrastructure and like Spell Table exists and like Discord tournaments and all this stuff, love that it exists. Glad that everyone was able to come together during the pandemic and like put that infrastructure in place. Now we're actually like making use of it. I think it's an incredible thing. It's really, really sad to see these kinds of things happen, because you kind of have two things that are going to happen. One, you're going to have people like us that are, speaking out about this and speaking against it, and then you're going to have copycats is what's going to happen. Part of kind of the raising awareness is we got to tell people about this. We got to tell people, this is what's happening. This is how people are going to try and think. This is how people are going to try and rationalize that, try and get out ahead of it. I think that's really, really important. I think that's super duper important. Like beyond like the whatever we have with this individual, making sure that people know about this, know how to fight against it. If we're talking about doing a lot of tournaments more, it means online tournaments are going to start happening more. This is going to be something that will be happening. I think it's super important to make sure that if you are playing online to like keep an eye out for these things, and like these best practices and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, like, it's just one of those things where when it started up, like, everyone thought that, oh, webcam is so convenient, it's so great, blah, blah, blah. I am an avid, like, in-person Magic card gamer. I really like playing in person. I think that there are significant advantages to doing that as opposed to playing online. That said, I've been jamming a lot of games on Spell Table, like, the past week or two with just some of my friends. And even then, like, not being able to see someone's body language, not being able to read facial expressions, even just looking at cards is challenging based upon people's like setups and things like that. I really, really do not like it. It's like one of the whole things that we talk about with like, it's really important for CDH to be equitable and like for people to be like, for it to be accessible to people and whatnot. But like, I don't know. It's just something about like looking at like the cameras and stuff. It just makes it's really hard for me to process all of the information and like remember it versus like if I'm sitting at a table, like I'll see a card go to someone's graveyard and just know it's there for the rest of the like I don't know why. It's just the way it works for me. But it's just like the way that my brain engages with it. So like for me, in person is way more accessible. So it's just one of those things where it's like they were talking about some of the other members of the community were like last summer or whatever, we're talking about, oh man, it's time to like just do away with in-person tournaments altogether because online's the future, online's the way. It's so easy. No one is saying no, you're wrong. That's just online tournaments have a lot, just as many problems. They have a lot of problems, the same like quantity as in person. It really just like they're just different, right? And for some people, maybe online is better. Maybe the fact that you don't have to leave your house to travel somewhere makes it a lot better. But we need to be working to support in-person tournaments just as much as online tournaments, because as we know from like this whole thing that just blew up the Magic Twitterverse and Facebooks and all that stuff recently, like this whole like cheating scandal, the most recent one, there've been a couple over the past couple months, but they just keep finding more and more and more cheaters in online because it's just easier to do, easier to get away with. And it's something that we need to be aware of. It's like if we let the support for in-person die, if we like convert all our resources into online, we're gonna lose the respect that we have as CDH players. One of the things that I saw online this past like week or so was somebody mentioning how it actually might have been from Lamora's Cards. They did a video about cheating as well. It was like, guys, CDH just like within the past year kicked the reputation of we're just pub stompers. We just want to go in there and just like beat people into the dirt. But now now
we're online cheaters.
Yeah, now it's like, hey man, have you heard of this game? It's called CDH. You get to play Magic, but also you get to cheat.
The C stands for cheat.
The C stands for cheating EDH.
Yeah, I bet I'm the first person to make that joke ever. I'm so funny. Yeah, now that you mentioned it, yeah, it's been a while since I heard like the whole pub stomper rhetoric.
Yeah, and I think that's just like one of the natural like growths of players, casual and competitive, is they're recognizing like where they sit on the spectrum and just getting a lot better at that Rule Zero conversation that the rules committee pushed on us. Like, hey guys, do this, talk about this before you play your games if you're just playing casually. Couple years back, and like it's finally caught on. People are having it, people are discussing, they're
That's
like
awesome.
Not getting salty at people, right? That's great. Now we're just cheating.
Now we're
not
just
mad at
cheaters
people anymore. We're just like taking every unethical and rule illegal action that we can to try and win.
We care about winning so much. I'm willing to break the rules to win.
Yeah, it's not a good look for our format, especially when we want like to grow CDH and we want to bring people in. This is not the type of environment that we want to foster, or like the reputation you want to have where you're like, oh yeah, CDH is where all of the people who just cheat go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like there's been a great effort to curb that style of thinking, where, you know, everyone is sounding off about this guy and memeing on him, and I think that's a pretty good deterrent. Like, if you get caught, like, dude's probably mad embarrassed. I feel like anyone who gets caught in this instance, you're just like, how can you show your face anywhere? I couldn't. I don't think I would have the gumption to show up to any tournament, especially like immediately, let alone like after my ban period is up. I don't think I could. Because at least me personally, I'm conscious enough and self-conscious enough, and insecure enough to know that like I would be called out immediately if I were to sign up for any tournament. Like, hey, aren't you the guy that cheated like X amount of months ago? And I feel like the outcries have been pretty good at like establishing that. I mean, how many tweets, how many videos, how many people?
Oh, there have been a lot.
You know, everyone knows about this instance. Everybody knows. And there's a really easy way to avoid getting yourself in that position. Do you know what that is, Alice?
Can I wager a guess?
You absolutely can.
Don't cheat.
Wow. Full points. Full marks on that. Let's go. Yeah. It's a very easy thing to do. It's free. It fits in the companion slot. Even if you don't have a companion, you can just not cheat. Super simple, super easy. You always have access to it.
It's in the player action slot.
It's in the player action slot. It's a special action. Same thing with more. If you can't respond to it, it just happens. Just don't cheat. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. It's fun that you mention casual. Because one of your points, and this is a great segue because I'm great at segues. You know, cheating casual makes you more likely to cheat when there's actual stakes is what you got written down. What's kind of the thought behind that?
Yeah. So once again, like I'm pulling a lot of like the dialogue points from the online discussion is some people were saying that like, oh, like if we know who you are now, like you're cheating now that there's money on the line. And I don't think that really follows. I think
I don't think so.
I think it's like kind of inverted, right? If you're cheating when there's money on the line, you're for sure gonna cheat in casual, and vice versa. Like if you're cheating in casual, you're for sure gonna cheat when there's money on the line. Because like if you're cheating with no stakes, if you're like, oh man, I really need to win this badly, then you're definitely gonna like take every like slimy little thing you can do to try and eke out a win when there's prizing, right? And so I think that's worth mentioning. I think it's really just, I just don't get why people think that players who cheat in casual might not cheat in like money matches or whatever. So just something that was said online where I just like, just be aware that like if you're playing with people at your local game store or whatever and they're cheating in your casual game, like if you ever go into a tournament with them for whatever reason, just be aware like they're gonna be cheating. So or they're gonna at least be very heavily biased towards cheating just because like that's who they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like how we talk about if you lie, like you just can't trust that person again, right? Like you just can't afford to. Yeah,
you just can't.
Yeah, there's just you can't move past that. It's the same thing with cheating. Once you've cheated once, every single game you're ever gonna play is gonna be suspect because we just don't know. Like that's who you are, that's who you've been, and maybe people can change, maybe people can't. That's a completely different discussion. But the possibility, the threat, the looming like feeling that this person could be cheating is just always gonna be there for anyone who's playing with you.
Mm-hmm. And it's such an uneasy thing to bring into a table. The risk reward is so heavy on the risk. It's like, yeah, you win a tournament, but on like you get one, if you trip up once, if you get caught once, this is what happens.
Yeah, you're never playing another tournament.
You can't. Like even by the good graces of everything, if everything goes smoothly, they have a perfect record. Oh guys, I'm a changed person after the ban period. and by everyone's like policy and whatever, allowed to play a turn, I don't trust that person. I can't trust that person. If I see them at an event, I'm gonna loudly go, "Hey, you're the guy that cheated, right?" Like, I gotta make sure everybody knows about that. You know, it's such a. I can't get behind my mindset. I can't get behind the mindset of needing to win so badly that you need to just break the rules. You know, we're here to play a game, not win. The winning is cool. We like winning. We'll talk about winning a lot. But like, I have never been so consumed by needing a victory that I would be willing to cheat in tournaments. And to do that both in a tournament setting and a casual setting, it's something that I just can't fathom. I don't understand what goes on behind in the mind of someone who just decides to do that.
Right. No, I'm totally with you. I like, it's one of those things where when we play casual games, we don't usually cut each other's decks because like, it's not that serious. Like, you cut decks in tournament because yes, it can prevent cheating if someone can help too, right? But also, like, sometimes people have shuffling biases in their shuffling patterns. Mm-hmm. Not that they're intending to, but just unconsciously, like, certain cards might, like, you play them a lot together. You're like, oh, I'm gonna play this card, I'm gonna search up this card, I'm gonna cast this card, and then when you're shuffling up, they end up next to each other, and like, based on your shuffling pattern, something that like went in your graveyard and you mushed into the bottom of your deck is going to end up on top accidentally.
Yeah, my Thoracle and my console are next to each other because the last two cards I played.
Exactly. So it's one of the reasons we cut, is just like mix things up a little bit. Just an extra factor of randomization. But like when we're playing casually, just jamming games or whatever with the peeps, it's one of those things where we don't really care that much. I don't present my deck to cut. I don't cut anyone else's deck. Which sometimes takes people a little off guard if they're playing casual with me for the first time. They're like, "Oh, you don't want to cut?" And like, that's my whole thing. Is like, I'm like, "Are you planning on cheating?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Then I don't really need to cut, do I?"
Yeah, not really.
Like, if you get crazy lucky, it's a casual game. You got crazy lucky, man. Good for you. That's awesome.
I cut someone's deck to the perfect top card earlier today. I was playing cards.
Oh, no.
They're like, "Oh man, I don't hit my one of," and I cut their deck in front of them, and I flipped over the one of, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, dog."
Dude, it's great. It's so great. I've done that before. I've
been chaos warped into the perfect card before. I've chaos warped people into the perfect card.
Chaos warped into the same card that somebody chaos warped away. Like, you shuffle it up, and they're like, "All right, seal your fate, brother," and they cut the deck, and then you're like, "All right, here's the top card. This is the card they just got rid of." You're like, "Let's go."
I think
I'll resume my loop or whatever.
I think twice I've chaos warped you, and you flipped Grand Abolisher on me, and you just win on the spot.
Yeah, I know one time you reality shifted me. You were playing Kinnan or something, and you reality shifted my something or other.
Yeah, that was that reality shifted to a Grand Abolisher.
Yeah, but you don't know, and so I was like, okay, cool. That's the card that's face down. All right, cool, whatever. Go to my turn. Player action. This Abolisher is now face up.
So disheartened. I think that's the reason I stopped playing Reality Shift. Is like, I'm never giving this the possibility of happening.
Never
again. I will unfortunately play a Chaos Warp in my Rakdos decks because the deck needs a universal out. But Reality Shift, get that shit out of here.
And Blue's got Resculpt now, so we have better options.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, we don't even need to worry about that.
Just hella funny on some of those ones,
yeah,
right?
Like,
that's random. That's awesome.
Yeah, but like that's part of the fun of card games. Is like, you have that randomness, or like sometimes the top of the deck just favors you or your opponent more. There's nothing much you can do beyond that. I think that's the biggest that you steal the soul out of card games when you decide to cheat. You steal the allure, the mystery, the luck, the chance of it all. Where, like, explain card games to people, it's like this. You're going to be powerful sometimes, and you're going to be able to do powerful things with your opponent sometimes. Sometimes it's going to be really back and forth. But other times, you're going to get crushed, and you're going to crush your opponent. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. Be it the dice roll, top of the deck, hand decision making, whatever. That's just kind of how cardboard goes. And to rob yourself and your opponents of that allure, of that joy, I think that's the greatest crime outside of like the social like ramifications of cheating personally. Because you don't get fun stories like, oh yeah, I chaos warped into Grand Abolisher, or reality shifted into the perfect card you needed. You know, or, oh man, I cut the deck into your perfect top deck. Man, that sucks, you know? Like, you rob yourself of those instances, and that's just disheartening to me.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and it is not fun, and we hate it.
Yeah, no, it's
but-
awful.
But what are I guess some of the ways we can cover some of the ways to like prevent cheating. Honestly, the biggest one, and this is like, it sounds really simple and it's gonna sound really dumb, but just like be vigilant, just pay attention, right?
Mhm.
It sounds so obvious and like so not helpful, but there are a couple of ways that we can do this, both online and in person. So for online tournaments, everyone says record your games. That way, if there's any questions later, you can go back, review the footage, and like watch it repeatedly, and double check and triple check and quadruple check and make sure there's no issues. Or if there is, you can catch it and figure it out, right?
Big
a lot
one.
of,
OBS is not hard to set up. If you're planning on grinding a lot of online tournaments, it's just going to save your ass.
Yeah, it's really convenient. But the recording games is really helpful because even the most skilled magicians, like a lot of times if you watch their videos in slow-mo or whatever, like not the ones they've uploaded, but the one that someone like filmed from the audience or whatever, they weren't supposed to be, like you can see what's going on. If you watch that video a bunch of times over, you'll figure it out. Because there's no editing, right? You see everything that happens frame by frame by frame. So you can figure out what's going on. That's kind of like, other than just like watching your opponents like a hawk in online tournaments, it's kind of the most you can do. And it's also really unfortunate because there's like there's no way to figure out someone's cheating really until after the tournament when they've already won and been paid out and everyone else has been like screwed over.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of the reasons online is inferior to in-person, in my opinion.
Spicy.
But for in-person, there are a couple of other ways that like you can go about it. It's like, recording games is hard. So you might not be able to confirm anything like super hardcore at like a day or two after the tournament, right? But what you can do is just like pay attention, ask people questions. Once we say it all the time, but communicate. Be like, hey, how did you cast that spell? Oh, okay, sorry. What, like, if there's a question like, what mana did you tap? As spectators, if you're spectating, obviously don't comment on games, but if there's ever an issue, you can ask players to pause while you go get a judge to clarify the board state. So there's things like that. And then just like, but it really just boils down to that communication, right? So like those table police people, like they can be the bad guys at times where they're just like, oh my god, he's asking me how I did that again. He's so obnoxious. He's just trying to throw me off my game. And yeah, a lot of times they are. But it's also like, it does have its moments where someone's like, how did you cast that? And you're like, oh, well I did, wait a minute. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I can't cast that spell with these lands. I have to tap this other like blue pip or something to cast my mana drain. I have to tap 2 blue pips. I thought this land was tapping for blue or whatever, like this exotic orchard or whatever, and it's actually not. Things like that can just help to clarify the board state and maintain the game's integrity.
Stacks pieces and the like.
Yeah, stacks pieces and the like, rule of law, collector of all those types of things, right? Things that people just forget about sometimes. It's like, it's helpful to just constantly be like, hey, let's not forget about this. This is an effect that's in play, so let's not have any issues with it. That type of thing is really beneficial, even if it can be obnoxious at points. But it's also like people who are doing that table policing can also mitigate the way that they're being obnoxious by trying to be polite and respectful with their questions, just like using tact. So instead of saying like, hey, you can't cast that spell, you didn't tap your mana correctly, like, hey, sorry, just wanted to clarify it. Can you cast that spell like by tapping that mana? Can you just confirm for me like whether or not you can and like why? And if someone's like, oh yeah, I can. I tap my exotic orchard, my Trop Island for my mana drain or whatever. You can be like, I just wanted to check, and maybe I'm missing something, but I think that the exotic orchard doesn't tap for blue. Like this player doesn't have an island out, this player doesn't have an island out, and I don't have an island out. Like that land doesn't tap for blue. And they're like, oh, okay, you're right. Sorry about that. Guess I can't cast a spell. Or I have to tap my mana differently or something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big issue either way.
No.
It doesn't have to be like super aggressive from the table policers, which I think is the biggest issue that I've seen with people who are trying to maintain game state is they just get super aggressive. I know I've snapped at people before, just like the heated tournament, right? You're like, hey, you can't have that trigger, you missed it. And it's like, don't respond that way. That's not great.
Nope.
We all like miss a little sometimes, and that's okay. But for the most part, we want to try and like keep it level and be like, hey, I know that like you want that trigger, but it's tournament play, it's competitive. I don't think you can draw that card off of your risk study or whatever because you've missed the trigger. And if it becomes an issue again, as always, call a judge.
They're there for a reason. No, 100%. It's all in the way you handle it. And it's all in the name of keeping the game good, keeping the game fair. It's the same reason why we talk about politics the way we do. Like, it's all just communication. You know, you can there's a right way to handle it and there's a wrong way to handle it. You know, I have never once felt like anytime's like, hey, how did you do this? I'm more than happy to explain how I did it because I at least think I'm correct. This is someone outside of me validating that. That's just as critical because sometimes you can just miss things. Lord knows I've missed things. I've also called people out on missing things. Like it happens. Game's complicated. Game is crazy. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting that little bit of outside help. Just at the very least, making sure that you're correct. So it helps me know that like, oh yeah, no, I can perfectly explain everything that I did right here. And everyone goes, oh, okay, cool, we're good. We're just checking. Makes me feel like I'm on top of my game. I feel like $1 million when that happens.
Yeah.
I had a thought with like online tournaments. I guess it's a little bit hard to like track things. I would say like it's pretty easy. At least something that I try and do is just make sure that my hand is like either on the table or like my hand's here in my deck's like all my cards are very much in plain view of my camera. So that way, like, you know, if for whatever reason, you know, I guess I can like palm a card or something to like pick up my hand, but be a little bit easy to notice that. I feel like if all my cards are very clearly like on display, like I frequently just put my hand down on the table and just like cross my arms, just like think and look at the table. But I think just making sure that you maintain your game space online, you know, spend some time, make sure your camera is set up properly. If you can put together a decent setup, that's just going to do wonders, not only for you, but for everybody else who's viewing your board. Just making sure that you have that clear pace, oh my god, I can't speak today. That clear space for everybody to view. That's going to go such a long way. Just making sure that, you know, you're putting your best foot forward with these things, so that way you can have the doubt removed from you.
Make sure that your camera is like covers like an extra like couple inches outside of your play space and stuff like that if at all possible. Just making sure that your opponents can see as much of the area around you as possible, like while still seeing your board and everything. Like it's hard to do without like building a room for it, right? And that's not something like people are just trying to play. They're just trying to play Magic. They aren't industrial like construction people who are like creating a film studio for recording. So a lot of times they're just like, hey, I want to go play in this online webcam tournament.
Let me throw something together real quick.
Yeah, you strap. There's some of the most weird setups that I've seen. People suspending phones from wires from ceilings. I've seen like the book pile, shoe boxes. I've seen wooden contraptions. Sometimes like they're a little bit more put together and they got like a webcam arm that they just like clip to their desk. It hangs over their desk. That's awesome. But not everyone has that. So seen some really interesting setups. Cameras balanced in between two monitors, things like that.
Those jank setups are my favorite. I love the jank setups. Every time I see the jank setup, I'm just reminded, like, I just need to build my own webcam stand. That I have the idea for. I just need to like make it. I've just been lazy for it. Maybe this time around, since I'll be hopefully doing more online stuff. So we'll see. So what are kind of like the basic, like, I guess what's like the easy cheats, I guess, that people can like be on the lookout for?
Just things to watch out for.
Yeah.
So we mentioned like card mechanicking and stuff earlier. Being a card mechanic is really hard. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of time and effort for a very nefarious practice, right? Not something that many people are going to do, or like a skill set a lot of people are gonna like have or run into, even with like some training. That said, it is very easy to go to like YouTube and watch a couple like short videos on how to do magic tricks and things like that, and then you can apply a lot of the same principles. So some of the really simple stuff to look out for is there's fake shuffling, fake cutting, and those are all basically they're shuffles that are designed to look real, or cuts that are designed to make people think that they're cutting the deck, but then actually leaving a specific card on top. You see that, like, that's one of the things that the guy in the video does. He presents his deck for that Brazilian cut, but like we were talking about how cheating thrives in that like inability to communicate clearly, in that
kind of gray area.
Yeah, that like space that exists in between the different houses and things like that, where someone's like, oh, put 2 on top, and he's like, okay, give me a different pile or something like that, and they're like, oh, okay, and then like give it a pile and they put that pile on top, like just like misdirecting, like making jokes that aren't really jokes, and then like sort of like being like, okay, well, I've cut my deck into 3 piles, I'm gonna 2 on top. And they're like, okay, how about you give me a different pile? They're like, okay, 3 on top, or whatever it was they said, and they're like, okay, and then they go and put 3 on top, whereas if they said like 3 on top to begin with, they would have just put 3 on top, or whatever it happens to be. There's there are different, like, if you see anyone shuffling like kind of weirdly, that's a good one to keep an eye out for. There are a lot of different like techniques for controlling cards within the deck, trying to move them to the top or the bottom of the deck or whatever. So like you can shuffle your deck, put a card on the bottom, and like cut your deck a certain way, and it'll move to the top of the deck, and it's like really hard to see if it's done well. There's stuff called like sloppy shuffling is something that magicians do sometimes, and like card cheats and whatnot. It's called sloppy shuffling because it's just that. It's people like shuffling poorly. So if you see someone who's shuffling really, really, and this is probably like the easiest thing to call out, is if you see someone who's shuffling very, very poorly, like being slow about it, and like they're like the way that they're weaving their cards and stuff doesn't look right, if they're doing an overhand or whatever, it's called sloppy shuffling, and it's called that because it's designed to make it look like they don't know what they're doing. So it sort of disarms people, being like, oh, they can't be controlling cards, they're bad at shuffling.
They don't know what they're doing.
Not true. They know what they're doing. They may or may not be great at shuffling, but by shuffling slowly and disarming their opponents' like awareness, they're able to like take a little more time to move cards where they want them in the deck. So like be aware of that. If someone looks like they're just struggling to shuffle like nobody's business, or like their shuffling is super, super messy or like sloppy, that's something just to keep an eye on. Doesn't mean that they're cheating, but it's just something to keep an eye on, right? I'll note that in the rules for Magic, players have to be able to shuffle their own deck. So if a player cannot do that, that's a rules infraction. So get a judge involved, because there are accommodations that can be made for players who are unable to. But it's just something that like can be like, hey, you seem like you're having trouble shuffling your deck. Let me get a judge for you real quick. Maybe they can shuffle it for you. It's also players are allowed to shuffle their opponent's decks when they're presented for cut, and that it's like, it's not something that is kind of disrespectful, but like also not really. Like it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're ever not sure, just instead of cutting your opponent's deck, just shuffle it a couple times.
It's just the safer option.
Like, yeah, just like 2 or 3 like overhand shuffles will get you there, and then give it back to them. Like give it a cut and then give it back to them, and then from that point, that counts as the cut. They should not be shuffling their deck anymore. If they do go to shuffle their deck again, you can tell them, oh, you don't need to do that. I've cut your deck. I've shuffled your deck. You're good. Yeah. And if they like every single time they keep doing that, that's like one of those warning signs. Where it's like, well, they keep trying to mess with their deck after I've randomized it. So there might be another issue here.
Yeah, it's always like one of those weird things where I've presented my decks for people to cut, and sometimes like they just like go right in for the quick shuffle. I'm like, every single time I see that happen, like, this person's been cheated maybe one too many times. That makes me feel a bit safe, because I know I'm not cheating, but they're making sure there is definitely no cheating going on.
Oh yeah. What else to look out for? The Hindu shuffle. Nobody should be.
What's that one?
If you ever see anybody shuffling like this for real, they're either like not actually trying to randomize cards because they're just like messing with them, or it's like they're just kind of like sort of halfway shuffling, or they're cheating. There's no two ways about it. It's the Hindu shuffle is where you grab the short end of the deck. So you hold the deck in your hand, and you grab the short end of the deck, and you pinch off a couple of cards from the top, and you pull the rest of the deck out from the bottom. So like, and then at that point you put it on top, and you pinch off a couple from the top, and you pull out some from the middle, which would be the bottom card from the middle, as well as some of the rest of the cards. So it's like, in theory, you're like sort of randomizing it by moving cards from the bottom, or from the top of the deck to the bottom, and then the top, which is the middle, to the middle bottom, like sort of like kind of halfway inverting the deck.
Okay,
but the shuffle doesn't randomize cards anywhere close to effectively enough for a game, especially a TCG. And it's super, super easy to manipulate card placement using the technique.
Yeah.
So nobody should ever be shuffling it that way. If they are, call a judge on.
Yeah, no one should. You shouldn't be relying on that as like your only method of shuffling. I feel like
people should be riffle shuffling or overhand like weave shuffling.
Yeah.
Mash shuffling.
I had a pile of cards, and as you were explaining it, I'm like trying to do this. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I see how that exactly.
Yeah, that bottom card, that's always the same, and then you know exactly where that bottom card is at all times.
Yeah.
You know what's really hard to tell is when you grab all of the cards except for the bottom one, and then just put the bottom one on top. It looks exactly like you were just finishing the shot.
Because I definitely do like the whole like grab the deck in the center, like pull out a chunk and like put that block on top. But I always riffle shuffle or mash shuffle afterwards, because I'm like, I'm just trying to break up my own shuffling patterns. That's just a good way to
and
do
that's
that
fine.
way.
But like, if that's the only way someone's shuffling, no.
I will teach you how, or you will do this in small pairs, and we will get there eventually.
Also, it's a Magic game. No one should be doing like fancy cardistry stuff with their decks, because these decks are worth a lot of money if they're not proxied. And
don't
and
be doing
if
the hand tuck with the
like they're like flipping cards and shit. Like, no, stop doing that. Stop doing that.
This card is worth a lot of money.
If it's real, it's worth a lot of money. If it's not, like,
I guess whatever.
I guess, but like also stop. You're playing a card game. No one cares no one cares that you have Magic hands. Like, that's a detriment. So like if you see people like breaking their deck into like multiple piles and then like restacking them and then like flipping them and stuff like that, like one of the things you'll see in the video is the cheater guy. He does what's called a double undercut, which is where the bottom of your library, your deck of cards, is a known card, right? So you know that this card is there. You want that card on top. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab the deck just like you were gonna cut it from your hand to the table, and what you're gonna do is you're going to have just a tiny little like gap in between that bottom card and your pinky finger, and that's gonna allow you to. So you're gonna cut half the deck. You're gonna set it down, and then you're gonna cut half of the deck that's still in your hand. You're gonna set that on top, and then you're gonna cut the deck again. And you're going to put that on top. So now you have a little bit of a break above the card that you're trying to cheat to the top of your deck, and you're gonna drop that on top, pick up the deck all together, and put one more cut where that last little pile comes off that bottom card, leaving it on top of the deck, and then you're gonna put the rest of the deck on top. It's called a double undercut, and that's one of the techniques that the guy uses to move cards from the bottom of his library and the middle of his library to the top of his deck. So keep an eye out for people who are like cutting their own deck into multiple piles, because that's kind of weird. And then of course,
if it looks weird, it probably is weird.
It's basically the rule.
Shuffle their decks normally.
It is. Just like they should just be mash shuffling, which leads me to like honestly kind of the simplest, but like the most like devious to some degree. And this is the reason why we cut is because it's just so easy to avoid this simple cheat, which it's even possible to cheat unintentionally using this method. It just sometimes happens where you know the top card of your deck, it's a good card, so you want it on top, or you don't, like you're trying to randomize your library, but like you knew what the top card was, and like just by happenstance, people don't always, when they mash shuffle, they don't always mash the top half into below the top card, below the bottom half of their library, which is like, it's kind of hard to describe without like a video or something. But
No,
basically it's like,
I've definitely done that before.
yeah, like you see that top card, you're shuffling and you're shuffling and you're shuffling, like just mass shuffling, and you get done and you're like, wait a minute, this top card is the exact same card that I just had on top.
Yep. I know exactly. I know exactly the way to describe this phenomenon.
Oh, go for it.
So, me personally, whenever I mash shuffle, I usually just take half the deck and just try and mash both halves together. Sometimes what I accidentally do, and I've corrected this habit, but it still occasionally happens, but that's why I kind of like purposely mix up my shuffling styles to actually randomize as much as possible and prevent any of these things from happening, is sometimes when you take the top half of your deck, you're only mashing like the bottom quarter of that half that you picked up.
So that's the best way to put it. Yeah.
Yep. You just pick up half. Bottom quarter of that half is only being shuffled in, but that top half is just the same. I have done it unintentionally before, but usually I will. It's pretty fast for me to be like, draw this. I'm like, oh guys, I did not shuffle my deck well. Can I like reshuffle? That should not be there. I did not shuffle well at all. And
I'm sure most players who have like been playing Magic long enough have experienced that.
Oh
like,
yeah.
You're just shuffling and you're like chatting with somebody across the table from you, and you get done, you're like, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, or damn, I guess I'm lucky, but then I run through sets of just like, no, I probably just shuffled poorly. And
that's why we cut, is because that type of like cheating, it is cheating even if you don't intend to. But like that type of like controlling the top card to the top by mass shuffling can just happen like accidentally, just when you're not paying attention, and ensuring that the top card gets mixed into the middle of the bottom half every time. So like, we just got to be careful about that, and it just really boils down to, especially in tournament play, cut your opponent's decks. If you feel like something's fishy, like if something looks fishy, shuffle their deck, call a judge, ask a spectator to keep an eye on stuff and make sure everything's okay.
Yep. And especially if you're in a high stakes tournament setting, you feel like, me personally, any tournament I go to for like the next month or so, I'm usually not a deck shuffler when it goes for cuts. I'm probably going to be shuffling decks for cuts for a little while, at the very least, just to like scare off any
trauma.
any of those that would wish to copycat. It's like, no. I refuse to play this game. You will not pull this one over me. I will beat you on this. Closing thoughts. Don't fucking cheat at cardboard, you giant weirdo.
Yeah, it really does, like, not that I would hope that none of our listeners would cheat, but it really is one of those things where cheaters in the community have a horrible net negative effect.
Oh yeah.
On the community as a whole. Like, you taint the reputation of the format that like we all like love to play, and you make everyone suspicious of each other, and sort of like ruin that camaraderie and that idea of like, hey guys, we're here to enjoy a card game and like play it to the best of our ability at the highest level we can. And when you're like removing that contest of skill, when you're removing elements of like luck, like Joe said, that sort of like contribute to the enchanting nature of card games, it just makes it really unfun for a variety of reasons. But
it's the oxygen out of the room, man. That's not why we're here.
It's just not cool. It really just boils down to, it's not cool. And there's really nothing else I can say other than, don't do it. It's not cool. If you do it, you're not cool.
Yeah, you want to be the cool guy. This is not the way to be the cool guy.
Yeah, winning
straight up
doesn't make you the cool guy if you're winning because you're cheating.
Yeah, no, that makes you the worst guy.
And you will get caught eventually. It will happen, and once you're caught, it's Jover.
It's Jover, dude. It's so Jover. Yeah. I'm just gonna repeat points that I'm just gonna be saying forever until the rest of the time, because cheaters never prosper in the long run. You'll prosper the one time that you do, and then that's it. But you've left a stain on everything. So like, let's just move on from it. Like, I feel like everyone said their piece. Let's move on from it. We understand. Here's the do's and don'ts. That's all I got.
Yeah, it's really just that simple. Don't. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
No, you shouldn't. It's just that shrimple. It's just that shrimple. Alrighty, well, Atlas, I want to thank you for coming down to Ye Old Man on the Rocks to talk about some cheating bastards. pleasure as always. Got to learn about the Hindu Shuffle, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's
Never heard of that one before.
There's some weird stuff out there in the worlds of like card magic and card tricks and stuff like that.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for watching and listening. We'll catch you next time.